Well, today I'm joined by the Chief Scientist of M206, Amazon Geotraces 2, Andrea, and thank you very much for coming.
It's my pleasure.
Okay. Could we start perhaps with you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. I was a young researcher at the Free University of Berlin for I think 10 years. And then I moved to Bremen, to a newly founded English-speaking private university. And for the first 2 years I was a senior researcher there and then became a professor of geosciences. And that's the position I still hold today. Now the university is called Constructor University Bremen. And so I'm teaching in the field of earth and environmental sciences. And I'm supervising a research group and a laboratory for marine trace metal geochemistry. So this is basically the topic I started to work in during my PhD thesis.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's my professional life, I would say. And yeah, in my private life, I also have a family. I'm happy to say that I was able to have both and enjoy both sides of life. And yeah, I have 3 children, which now are already 27, 24 and 17. And yeah, we have a wonderful dog in our family, which is also a central person, so to say.
Okay. Well, we're now halfway through, or more or less halfway through, the M206 cruise.
Yes.
And I wondered just how you felt it was going so far. I know we've had a few little problems.
Yeah, I mean, it was clear from the beginning that this would be a challenging cruise because we are in a huge estuary system on the shelf system, which is very shallow. In 2018, when we had the first cruise M147 in this region, it was during the rainy season, with the water level from the rivers being way higher. Now we are here in the dry season, and the reason for that is that we want to see the different elemental fluxes coming from the rivers during high discharge and low discharge periods to make a kind of annual budget. But now the water level is even lower, and it makes it even more difficult to access some areas. And there are of course other limitations like fisher boats around and the tidal forces and so on and so on. What is different from 147 is that now, I mean, during M147 we were largely free to move in the area where we had the permission for. So it was basically a working area. This time we found out we have to keep strictly to the tracks and to the sampling points that we had in the original application to the Brazilian authorities. On top of that, this year there was an extreme drought in the upper Amazon basin and everywhere around. We even saw this in the mangroves already in the campaign before the cruise. So there's even less fresh water coming out this year than in normal dry periods. And so, which even makes it even more necessary to adapt our cruise tracks. Okay. And we had to submit specific coordinates, etc., and tracks during the permission process, but now we have to keep to them, and if we want to change anything we have to apply for it and wait for a permission, which is not always straightforward and directly, so sometimes it's simply not possible. So it has been a challenging cruise so far, but considering these constraints, I must say we were still very successful up to now.
Very good.
Because except for a few technical issues, we have had a lot of successful sampling stations, and we have a lot of water samples already.
Yes.
The only thing that was only semi-successful so far was the sediment sampling with the multicorer.
Yes.
Because we often found the underground to be covered by a hard crust, and the sediment corer, which has about 60 centimeter long liners, couldn't penetrate these crusts, and so very often we didn't get any samples. But the last 2 multicorer stations were wonderful and gave the people a lot of work, spending them in the cool room down there. So not to change the sediments when they sample it. That's why they work in cool room. And I'm confident there will be more successful samples in the second half of the cruise.
Yes, okay. As we move closer to
and a big part of the success story is the very efficient, friendly, and cooperative team. So all cooperate very well. We are very well supported by the ship's crew, and so this is really enjoyable. And this is always something I like on cruises, because it's a completely different situation than at home. At home, many things are much easier. If something breaks, you go to a shop and buy something new, or you order something new, or whatever. Here, we have very limited possibilities, but everybody is very creative. I find this really enjoyable.
Okay. Well, moving on to think about your role as Chief Scientist. Clearly you have a lot of responsibility.
Yes.
And there are a lot of balls to keep in the air.
Exactly.
So can you tell us a little bit about what that's like?
Yes. So the role of a Chief Scientist is clearly very different from the rest of the science team that is working in the labs or doing the station work to deploy the equipment, at least in a cruise like this that has so many challenges.
Yes.
And so I spent most of the time in my Chief Scientist office or on the bridge. Yeah, so I am responsible for the communication with the bridge, so making sure that all documents are delivered to the different authorities, that all information is conveyed between the bridge and the science team, and I have daily meetings with the science teams where I try to we try to develop the research plan for the next days, and then I try to accommodate it in the framework.
Sure.
So the boundary conditions that we have for the cruise, and then I develop the station plans which I distribute, and then there are always some unexpected things happening, and so I adapt the station plans and so on and so on. So yeah, this is it's challenging, and despite the challenges, it makes this job still a job I enjoy.
Right. Well, I was going to ask you
yeah,
about that, because it's a lot of people to keep happy. You're
oh yes. You are also a kind of mediator between the different groups of people.
Yep.
And so in the end, I'm responsible for a lot of things, but of course, if it works out well, it's also a good feeling that you in the end had a wonderful cruise. And yeah, I mean, of course, it doesn't end with the cruise, because we have to deliver cruise reports after that, and we then wait for the containers and the frozen samples to come back to Germany to bring them in the laboratories. Yeah, and then we start analyzing them, and there is a process of 2-3 years or even more after each cruise.
Sure.
Where we work on our samples, produce data. We will have regular meetings where we all get together again and discuss our things and try to have an interdisciplinary look to get a more holistic view on the Amazon system and its role in biogeochemical cycles and the climate.
Okay,
and then we publish, of course.
So from start, yes, of course, publishing your findings is the key to the whole thing, or it's the end result. But so if you think about a cruise as starting from the point at which you begin to plan it and submit the documents until you finally publish, on average, how long does that take? What does that time scale look like?
I would say at least 5 years. The longest time I've been waiting for a cruise is one cruise in the next year, where we had a successful proposal 7 years ago.
Wow.
This is a bit of exceptional, but it's hard to tell.
Yes. So this is one of many cruises that you've done. I don't know how many you've done, but it must be
many.
Quite a lot.
I've spent a few years of my life probably on research vessels.
Okay. It leads me into the question, why did you choose to develop a career in the sciences, particularly geosciences?
Yeah.
What drove you towards that? Was it the prospect of traveling and researching field trips?
Initially not, because I was always interested in sciences. So at that time I didn't know much about geosciences and geology, because at school at that time it was geography. And that is different. So I had no idea about geosciences actually. And so I decided to study chemistry, because chemistry I did quite well in school. I found it interesting, so I studied chemistry. And when I started my diploma thesis, I got a sample from my professor that was a potato-shaped black thing that was called the ferromanganese nodule. And when I asked my professor, what is this? He said, actually I don't really know. I got it from the professor in the geosciences department, and you should maybe call him and ask him what that actually is.
Okay.
So I got in contact with this geosciences department and learned more about what these ferromanganese nodules are. They come from 4,000 meter water depth on the sediment of the Pacific seafloor, and they grow slowly with time. They accumulate valuable metals, and I was supposed to analyze them.
Wow.
And so after some time, they offered me a student job to help them with the analytics, and I did this for 3 months. And during this time, I observed the research group preparing a research cruise. So they were packing and planning and things like that, and I heard words like Central Pacific, ferromanganese crusts on sea mounts, Fiji, Hawaii, Samoa, and I was like, wow, this sounds like something exciting.
Indeed.
And it took me a while until I was courageous enough to knock on the door of the professor and say, hey, could you imagine working with a chemist on that cruise? And is there potentially an option for a PhD project for me? And then the professor said, well, yeah, I had chemists before in my group, and actually geochemistry is something that we are doing anyway, so it works very well. And yes, I have a position for you in the running project that is related to that cruise. So, and
serendipity.
I instantaneously said yes. And yeah, so more than 30 years later, I'm still here.
Still
yes,
doing
I'm still here.
Okay. Well, finally then, thinking about anyone who's considering going into the sciences now, so teens of age 15, 16, 17, 18, is there anything you would say to them about their future career or their choice?
Yes, definitely. So, if you are enthusiastic about natural sciences, about the environment, about the oceans, whatever that is, and you truly love it, follow this career. We spend so much time of our lives in our jobs.
Yes.
I could not imagine spending so much time and energy on a job that I would not be enthralled of. So, science is something exciting and stimulating. You always find something new. It's never boring, and there's always something new to explore. And so take the pathway, take the challenge, and be open for opportunities and grab them when they come. There will always be open opportunities. And when you have made a decision, don't look back. It will be a good decision, and just enjoy the next adventure. And also with respect to career or job perspectives, I realize that people or young people today often think, they should go into computer science or IT or whatever because these are the secure jobs. But realistically, if our societies in a challenging world with climate change and everything like this today don't have the proper resources like water, like renewable energy, like whatever we need, or the environment is so destroyed that we don't have a healthy living anymore, then, computer sciences won't help us, because computers need critical materials that geosciences finds and helps to retrieve sustainably. We create the understanding for what climate change, what the impact of climate change will be, and how we can potentially mitigate it, or how we can develop a sustainable future. So actually, I believe that this is one of the core fields in science and also in the job market for developing a sustainable future. And there will always be demand in resources, in water, in clean air, and whatever resources we need.
So science is the thing.
Yes, definitely, and it will always be.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Very good. So you heard, go forth, be a scientist.
And
your country needs you.
Enjoy and be enthusiastic. You will be rewarded, no doubt about that.
Yes, that's good. Okay, that's a nice point on which to end. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me for this interview. I also enjoyed it very much.
We look forward to the next 15 days of the cruise.
Yes, me too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.